Welcome back to the second part of the demonstration. We're going to be looking at stripping and rebuilding of the common rail injector. We're going to be looking at the procedure, the environment and the tooling to do the job. One of the most important parts is to have a really good look at the injector. So you've got to make sure that it's not the stem hasn't had any blowback, which is the compression gases of the engine blowing past the seal. What this can do, you can warp the side of the injector. Once that's happened, the injector scrap. So have a inspect the injector. The biggest part is inspection. You must inspect the injector. That's the first part. If you see it's discoloured or bluing down one side, just throw it in the bin. Just get a new one. So we'll just put it into the vise. Just excuse me back. And there's a sealing washer. Now, as you can see, I've actually made a device to hold the injector. So it's not. So it's away from the corner of the bench. It's over a nice clean container, just in case you drop anything. It doesn't bounce off the corner of the bench and it just disappears. You'll see how small the parts are, as you're probably aware. Now the rubber seal, you take off the top of the injector, you'd be very careful. Now there's a solenoid. There's a solenoid spring, and there is a calibrator, which is a shim. That's the very top one. Just take that out. Now there's the first half of the actuator there and the small horseshoe that holds it in place. Actuator spring. And then there's a solenoid spring, washer, sorry, which is another calibrator. Now with a special socket with an hole in it. Take out the nut. It's got a machine side as a nut. That must go back how it came out. And if you lift out the back of the bottom of the actuator, it will lift out the cap and the ball in situ. Now you take the nozzle nut off. And the nozzle assembly. And there's a needle. Now there's two pins. Once again, they must be inspected. There is devices that hold the injector together while you rebuild and assemble. That's so you don't actually break these pins. People say you should fit new ones. We never do. We inspect everything before we rebuild. That part there is called the pointer. Once again, that's a calibrator. You put thicker ones or thinner ones in. And underneath there's a nozzle spring and another calibrator. So as you can see, there's quite a few calibrators up and down the injector. Right, there's the connecting rod and the valve assembly. This is a major part of the injector, the valve assembly. Gives lots of problems. We're going to look at that with a microscope in a moment. Also, where the connecting rod goes into the bottom of the valve assembly, anywhere there, it leaks from the bottom, and obviously it affects the injector. And sometimes there's a seal. Sometimes it comes out with the valve, sometimes it sticks in. In this case, it's stuck in. There we go, that's the seal. And there's to protect the seal, there's a small metal, it's like a shield to the seal, and that goes closest to the engine. So there we go, totally stripped down injector. Now what we do now, we give it a good look at, before we do any washing. The best thing now is to have a look under a microscope. Okay. Right, we'll just examine the valve assembly seat with a digital microscope. It's got to be at least 200 times magnification. Here we can see we've got a good example. You know, it's quite nice and clean around where the ball sits on the valve seat. Well, like I said before, we also want to take a close examination of the connecting rod, where it slides into the valve. It must be a really good snug fit, nowhere on the connecting rod itself. And the other components, well, you just basically look under the microscope. Any defects, you know, you have to reject the parts and the injector. It's better to reject an injector rather than to muddle through. I mean, it's all cost effective really. If there is damage on the valve seat, there was companies that made bits of gear that actually repaired the valve seat. There's one that's a little grinder, there's one with a little ball knocker. But to be honest, about a year ago, you could buy these separate now. Probably it's not worthwhile getting repaired. I mean, any doubt, just fit new. Here are all the relevant shims inside the injector. They're in various parts of the injector, and by altering the thickness of them does alter the injection time. By altering the pointer, which is that one, it will inject more or less fuel. The top injector, which is the armature spring calibrator, that can alter the injection start time. So can the bottom one. You can buy these now, they just come in ranges of sizes. Obviously you need to test the injector, and that's when it comes into its own, when we use our digital profile. We can actually see a profile of what the injector's doing. We can alter it accordingly. Yeah, it's by altering one part of the injector can affect the other. So it's a time-consuming job. That washer there is it's called the settlement washer. The settlement washer controls how the small ball floats. That washer there is the solenoid washer. By making it thicker or thinner, it depends how strong the injector injects, or how the armature is attracted to the magnet. That there corresponds with that spring there, which is a nozzle spring, and obviously that's the top one. But there the parts are available. Generally you just buy them and you just use a caliper, digital caliper, measure it, record the measurements, and then, you know, if you put the injector that together, if you record the measurements,